turn it right over to you. Just take over the screen.
Sure. I'm not even going to go through a deck because so much has changed recently, but I'll give people a quick overview in terms of who we are and what's going on and who's involved in what we've done lately. So as of right now, Ruse has ceased operations on the restaurant side of the business and has focused all of our efforts onto the manufacturing piece. We have cut expenses drastically by finding a partner. So our partner now is Frank and Russ Crigliano from Rosina Foods, and will be Russ has been an early investor in us, along with a number of members on that team. So we're moving forward with all of that. I see that our legal counsel, Brendan Rich, is on the call. So we're making progress, getting through all those hoops. And ideally, what we're doing is we'll be doing a capital round next time around, as basically taking all the operational work off of our plate and moving that over to Rosina Foods to create efficiencies. We've already gone through the R&D process to move all of our operations from our existing plant and facility to their plant and facility and give us a much larger scale of opportunity for run and a cost of efficiencies that are built in. A company like that who's doing about $300–400 million a year in a similar food space, what we've been able to provide is the opportunity and the acknowledgement that the marketplace for this particular product is ready and there for them. After doing a market study along with their internal team and our team, we assume that at a very minimum, there's about 180 million pounds of capacity in this particular product category. If you look at just pierogies, and with the opportunity to be as high as 280 million, based on the two major players in the space being Chimo out of Canada and British Columbia, and Mrs. T's here in the United States. Each plant has about 150 million pounds of capacity, and both more recently than not are running close to about an 80–90% efficiencies. So it's a pretty large marketplace. The ability for us to walk in with a new higher premium product with a protein base is one that we know Chimo out of Canada will not do because of the complications with the USDA, and that Mrs. T's is attempting to do currently, but because we were first to market, the opportunity with the brand and scale opportunity with Rosina behind us is going to be very good. So ideally what we're looking to do at this point is create a co-packing scenario with them and a contract, and then a royalty to initialize their sales team that will come back to a new holdings company that will own Ruse Pierogi and all of our existing investors. So looking at that scenario, we're pretty well situated for growth moving forward.
Why don't you tell us what you're doing?
So right now, what we're doing is we've moved over all the R&D and everything else, and then the brand for Ruse will maintain.
Zach,
yeah.
What's the product?
Oh, the product. Yeah, sorry. It's a pierogi. It's a dumpling, much like it's the Polish version of a ravioli, and they're filled with proteins and both proteins and non-protein based, but it's a dumpling, and that particular category was untouched forever. But there's a growing pierogi marketplace that's been happening with the advent of food trucks and small brands all over the country, and not just controlled within what was the pierogi pocket of the United States, the Northeast and Seattle.
Why was it overlooked for so long?
So many things, as you're scaling and trying to grow, what happens is you tend to become a value-based product, and it shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. And then there's, this kind of nod of the times for more traditional foods from other parts of the world that are coming back into attraction, and then looking at, what can you do with a product like this in order to Americanize it and get away from just the sauerkraut and cheddar potato components, but what other fillings can you work with in order to create new taste profiles and then make those taste profiles nostalgic to areas that normally wouldn't know what a pierogi is. And so that's what we went out to set to do.
Thank you.
Yep. Did that answer your question, Jeff?
Yeah. Folks eat this stuff for lunch or what?
Yeah, so we started by building a brand initially. So we started our own restaurant, and in order to do that too, we had to build a small-scale USDA facility on Niagara Street. So we accomplished both of those goals already. We actually wound up on the Food Network, and Sports Illustrated magazine is the #1 ballpark food in the U.S. So there was a lot of hype that we built around the product, which garnered the attention of many of the big competitors in the space. So they were all aware of who we were. And then with partnering with Rosina, it allows us the ability to scale, plus access to an international distribution chain, the highest level of food safety standards, and then the ability to private label for capacities and grow it, scale accordingly. Any questions or anything along these lines?
I'm out of questions. Thank you.
You got it.
What are your projected sales volume for this year and next?
So if we do 1.5 million pounds, which is very, very small based on the marketplace being about 200 and some million, we estimate we'll turn a profit of about $1.5 million. So that's kind of worst case scenario. That's if we kind of fall on our face. Our projections with the Rosina team on that component, it could be somewhere upwards of 10 million pounds for year one, with a consistent growth rate of market share that we continue to chip away at.
So are you raising money right now? Where are you?
We were going to go back to the original investors and do a pro rata, so that there doesn't have to be a liquidation event, and people can, even it out. After that turn, we'll be able to decide whether or not we want to bring in 1 or 2 more investors to cover any gaps for the existing investor base. Does that make sense, Kathleen?
This is just our first time here, and what everybody's objectives are is not always clear. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right now we do need about $650,000, but it's something that I think our existing investor group, and that $650,000 goes strictly towards marketing and advertising for growth, and rebuilding of our own internal sales team that will focus strictly on the Roos Pierogi brand, as opposed to going out and just selling pierogi as whole, which is going to be the Rosina effort from their 30-person sales team and then broker network. Outside of that, we've been able to cut a lot of overhead. So that 650 should give us all the capital necessary for sponsorships, demos, tasting events, all the annual marketing conferences, the events that we'll be attending, sending out of all the demo packages, and then a sales force of 4 people that will report up to the ad agency, and the ad agency will create all the collateral necessary to execute on what their needs are.
Where's a typical placement of your product in store?
In the inside store. So in grocery, we are in the frozen aisle. We also tend to be in prepared foods under grab and go sections. So you can find us at Wegmans and Tops in both of those areas. In C stores, which is your convenience stores, we tend to be in a grab and go scenario. We did a very successful test run that we ran through Delta Sonic that moved a lot of product there. They backburnered because they had some internal issues with other things and then some change management. But it's something that we'll be bringing back soon. There's a big category play, particularly in the C-store space. And then food service. So Permane Brothers signed on with us and rolled us out across all of the entire East Coast. So all of their locations and then distribution across the East Coast was managed through Permanis. And then we've just been reached out to again by Quaker Steak and Lube, which is another kind of fast food, fast casual environment. So it's both food service and retail. Any other questions or?
Yeah, Zach, I have a question. You've taken what has been traditionally an ethnic food, you know, Eastern
Correct.
European. Everybody has their own flavors or what they are used to when they were brought, you know, as they were being brought up as kids. And now you've introduced all these new exotic flavors and stuff. So is there an educational process that's needed to go along with that?
Well, we narrowed it down to 5 that were our best sellers after all the research and consumer play into the retail chains. And then there's a volume minimum to hit on new flavors, which we have scaled and have quite a large array of. And those would be strictly focused at more of a food service scenario. So the education is then more on the other end, which we will support, obviously. But when we went into Permanis, the traditional, we initially launched with a jalapeno popper type version with Permani Brothers, which was a jalapeno and cheese that was deep fried, and then they could serve it up very quickly across all their retail stores. Their sales were off the charts, obviously pre-COVID. So it was a really successful test run, and they came back and started looking at a dessert line, a number of other things that you know we could easily fulfill in terms. And we had already had R&D tested, so we were ready to fulfill. So we sent them down to their chefs, and the response was really, really strong in that particular category. But the initial test that we did, one of the hiccups they ran into is people are like, "Oh, there's no just cheese, or there's no potato in this." You know, that was the difference. What people initially believed was the pierogi, right? So we have a secondary brand that we also created that we call Hot Stuffs, which is, you know, akin to a Hot Pocket, but, you know, filled with all these great flavor profiles and everything else. So both brands have, provide opportunity. One in a geographic region where pierogi doesn't play on the heartstrings, and the other is just, you know, a little bit of education photography, but it's nothing that the agency is not akin to in the past.
We have time for maybe one more question. Anything else?
All right, look at that.